Uh, so very good morning, sir. So
Good morning.
let me, dear GMP batch, let me introduce the speaker to you. Dear GMP batch of XLRI, I am delighted to introduce Mr. Shantanu Gangal, an accomplished entrepreneur, the current CEO of Prodigal, a trailblazer in lending intelligence. Mr. Shantanu has been a driving force behind Prodigal's success, securing backing from esteemed investors like Y Combinator, Excel, and Menlo VC. Before co-founding Prodigal, he spearheaded data teams at Fundbox, showcasing his leadership in shaping data-driven strategies. His experience extends to working with prominent banks during his tenure at Boston Consulting Group and Blackstone. Mr. Shantanu's academic journey is equally impressive, with a bachelor's in computer science and engineering, being a gold medalist from IIT Bombay, and an MBA in entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial studies from the Wharton School of Business. Today, Mr. Shantanu will share valuable insights on SaaS Desh, building software for the world from India. I invite you to absorb the wisdom he imparts, drawing from his rich experiences and successes in the global tech arena. Without further ado, let's extend a warm welcome to Mr. Shantanu Gangal. Welcome, sir. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Uh, uh, so, if you want to say something, then we'll give you 2 minutes so that you can uh, say anything to the batch. Post that, we'll start with the fireside session.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for making time. It is very, very, very energizing to speak to your class. I'm sure it's like bright and early, so thanks for waking up in time for this session. Jokes aside, this is something. This topic is something that I believe very, very deeply, and it's very close to my heart, and I live it every single day. Building from India for the world is an extremely important opportunity that's going to actually shape our lives over the next 15-20 years. In many ways, it is actually a very lucky culmination of 3 or 4 very distinct macro trends, all propelling literally like a once in a generation opportunity. So I hope to share some of my learnings and experiences along the way so that you could benefit from it as well.
Thank you so much, sir. So, we'll begin with the session. We'll straight away go to the questions. So, the first question that the GMP batch wants to ask you is, what inspired you to embark on the journey of building software for the global market from India?
It's a great question, and I kind of tried to hint at it earlier. In many ways, it is a very, very unique opportunity that is, I definitely think, once in a generation opportunity. At the culmination of various macroeconomic trends that are propelling, obviously, a lot of India's growth, a lot of demographic trends that give us the kind of brain power and muscle power, making it a very unique time for us, as well as the global needs for software, especially with the likes of generative AI really shaping how we are going to really define capitalism and just like the industry as a whole over the next like 40 to 100 years, maybe. This makes it a very unique opportunity to build software very, very quickly. The first wave of software development, I kind of think of it as software super cycle 4.0. The first wave was like, especially for India, leading up to the Y2K moment or year 2000. The second wave, where India was mostly exporting talent. India was exporting like extremely highly entrepreneurial, but at the same time, skilled software engineers to the world. The next phase, the next 10 years or so, leading up to, let's say, Lehman or thereabouts, was where we were building applications for the world from India. We were exporting services, back office services from it to India. Uh, the third phase was essentially where we started building a lot of tools, which was the phase that we've been in the last like 10 odd years. And now the fourth phase is where we are exporting like enterprise grade software that is entirely built soups to nuts from India. And that inspired me to start what I'm doing right now in 2018, and kind of partake in this very unique opportunity to kind of build software, be a part of the super cycle 4.0 and build software from India to the world.
Yes, sir. So, moving on to the second question. The second question. Hello.
Yeah. Hey, give me a second. I actually someone asked me this question a couple of days back, so I actually prepared a few slides. This is how I think about it. To answer your question, essentially, we've gone a long way. Indian software, especially, has gone a long way from the 90s up till today, and where we stand right now is part of the super cycle. All of it will shape all of our lives. Basically, anyone under the age of 50 is gonna really benefit from it over the next like 40 to 100 years. And so, to that extent, this is what inspired me to be part of this macro super cycle. But yeah, back to you.
Yeah. So, thanks for the first question, sir. Moving on to the second question. It says that how does the Indian tech landscape contribute to the global software development scenario? If you could shed some light on that, sir.
Uh, a great deal. Everything from obviously a lot of the engineering colleges that churn out the likes of Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, and so on and so forth. So obviously, we are the Indian landscape is the Indian engineering talent is contributing to the global landscape globally. More importantly, though, obviously, India is driving two great trends. One is an uh, extremely capable group of people who are very, very well versed with maths and sciences. Um, Globally, there has been a pullback from teaching STEM, which is basically science, technology, engineering, and math, to high schoolers and middle schoolers. On the other hand, India obviously very rightfully so encourages education in math, sciences, fundamental sciences, and engineering, and that kind of gives us an unfair advantage that will propel our growth. And software is a great place to essentially turn a lot of what goes on around us into value. And software is essentially codifying the world around us into bits and bytes. And so, to that extent, India is contributing to this both a very, very sharp need or demand for global software, as well as a massive and decreasing rapidly short supply of talent globally, because people just aren't encouraged to study science and technology and math, and which is where we have like a very, very unfair advantage uh, to kind of lean into.
Oh, all right, sir. So that would mean India is a powerhouse of the STEM graduates, and that is why we are generating so many people who can take the
Yep.
tech landscape. Yeah. So a follow-up question to that is, can you share some key challenges and successes in navigating a global market from an Indian base?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, the biggest thing, especially if you think about software you would split into a couple of different kinds. Let's consider two axes. The first axis is who's your user of your software. Is it a consumer is like people like you and me, or is it enterprise or business, which is large corporations and so on and so forth. So if you think of that one axis, and then the second axis is the size of the deal and how is the selling process. Along those two axes, the biggest challenge comes in kind of B2C consumer, building B2C consumer for the world. It is a very, very fast moving set of tools and solutions and apps. Local tastes matter a lot. Local cultural design sensitivities matter a lot, and it is a challenge selling into that. On the other hand, where I come from, and like why we call it SaaS, the SaaS being software as a service. Building software as a service is essentially something that you would very, very most likely sell to other businesses, other enterprises. And that is a place which is relatively easy for all of us to sell into, because once you identify a business problem, it becomes very crisp to build software for it and sell for it. So, on the other hand, again, if you're trying to sell software for American teenagers by building like a mobile app, Android, iPhone app, that is a very hard value proposition. Similarly, trying to sell, let's say, software to governments overseas, global governments, global militaries, large education institutions in the US, uh, is a very, very different motion. It is not something that is it is not something that's super easy. It requires relationships that are built over decades, and that is another piece which I think of it as a holdout in some sense. I'm not saying it's not possible. Obviously, we have a great many Indian software companies that have done a phenomenal job along the way, but it's not the easiest to break into. Even all the success that like the likes of TCS and Infosys are having today is built on the backs of decades of work that they've put into building that credibility, building the capabilities to sell into that market. So to answer your question, if you think of like tough areas, I would say business to consumer software applications are typically tougher. Selling to very large enterprises, the governments, federal governments, is typically tougher.
Yes, sir. Uh, so that was right response. Then moving on to the next question, it says, in your experience, how
Yeah,
crucial is cultural understanding when developing software for diverse international audiences? It's a
great
follow-up
question.
question to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it matters again more in consumer and less in enterprise. In enterprise, what you need to know first and foremost is the pain that you're solving for your customers. The cultural sensitivities matter relatively less. That being said, and the opposite is true for consumers, right? If you're building a fitness app for for like fitness app for cycling enthusiasts, understanding cultural sensitivities is more of a prerequisite than if you're building an enterprise solution. uh, so it is important. It is actually not straightforward. The way you would overcome it if you want to build it is hire a lot of local designers who kind of appreciate some of the local sensitivities, and that allows you to overcome some of the cultural differences, as well as actually build a strong community around your consumer application so that you can have a lot of users influence your product roadmap and make it better and better.
All right, sir. Another question in the same regard is, what role does innovation play in the success of Indian software companies operating on a global scale? Yeah, that is a very pertinent question, sir, that you
It,
would, yeah.
innovation actually plays like a very important role, but that answer is true for everyone. So it's a little bit of a, yeah, it's a globally true question answer. Specifically for Indians, I think innovation happens on two dimensions. One is obviously software innovation, but the second is also obviously staffing and cost innovation. If we can build software in a way that we can cost differently, staff differently, price differently, share in the gains differently, that goes a really long way, and that is something we should continue doing.
Right, sir. Then another question is, how do you balance the need for cutting edge technology with the practicalities of global software adoption?
Uh, it's a I don't think it's a trade-off. I think you need to do both, honestly. No one said it was going to be easy. So to that extent, it is really important to kind of dive in and do both. You have to innovate, you have to kind of drive urgency, you have to focus on the important as well as the urgent.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Then moving on to the next question, it says, can you share examples of how Prodigal has leveraged India's strengths in software development for global clients?
Absolutely. We have a large team building out of Mumbai and Bangalore, and we have like phenomenally strong developers, very strong engineers that we've hired in both Mumbai and Bangalore for that. It kind of benefits in two ways. One is just like just like when you're selling, you need to have cultural sensitivity to the customer that who's buying your software. Similarly, when you're building, our ability to kind of obviously build in local languages, hire and do interviews in whatever Hindi, Marathi, actually goes a long way in finding people who are exceptionally strong engineers and building them, taking them along in our teams, coaching and developing them. So that is one place where uh, our ability to kind of roll up our sleeves, hire people who might be overlooked by the large conglomerates who need a certain amount of finesse, but we actually are able to nurture and build like long tenures with our employees, uh, creates a self-sustaining advantage.
Yes, sir. Then, when you say that people are actually being nurtured at your organization, then I would really want to understand. I mean, how does Prodigal as a company, in fact, take steps to retain the employees? I mean, how would you actually follow or take steps in that regard?
Absolutely. So I think, look, there's a saying, and you, really like good employees only, even the best employees really start hitting the stride and contributing back to the organization in year two and year three. I'm a strong believer in that. The kind of symbiotic relationship that we have with our team really like starts to thrive in year two, year three onwards. We have so many employees who finished 4 years with us as well. Some of our earliest employees are still with us. And the way you do that is obviously really focus on nurturing their personal development, improve the quality of the work, give them a lot of independence. In a small startup like ours, it is always not possible to have like a large learning and development team. It is not possible to always have a very very elaborate career paths outlined on day one. That is fine, but I personally as founder really care about the fact that like our team stays with us for a really long time and grows with us. And so to that extent, all of that responsibility falls to me and my co-founder Sangram to nurture and grow talent that stays with us for a really really long time. Again, like I said, some of our three of our earliest employees really finished like 4 years with us recently, and that is something that we take a lot of pride in.
Oh, uh, great to listen to that, sir. I hope employees are actually being very loyal and being very, uh, loyal towards the company. Another question with respect to the subject is, how does Prodigal ensure cybersecurity and data privacy compliance when catering to a worldwide clientele?
Oh, we take that very seriously, but it is in the scheme of things a somewhat straightforward thing to do. We are PCI compliant and certified. We are SOC 2 Type 2 certified. We go through a lot of audits, both for info security, as what is called as penetration testing and stuff like that, to make sure that our servers are robust and hardened against any kind of malicious attack. There are experts who we have a couple of people in our team who focus exclusively on this, and they in turn work with like 6 to 8 experts externally who come in, inspect, audit, uh, put our systems through the ringer in order to make sure that they are not only up to date but really really robust. The good thing is it is something that is somewhat of a solved problem. So if you commit to solving it, prioritize it, put some money behind it, it is a deterministic problem, not a problem that is as hard as finding a new business model. So to that extent, it is important. But you should focus on it. If your customers ask for it, it is a problem that is tractable. You commit budget to it, you commit time to it, and get it done.
Yes, sir. That was a great response. Then moving on to another question, it says, in your view, what are the key trends shaping the future of software development, particularly from an Indian perspective?
Sorry, could you say that again?
So, in your view, what are the key trends shaping the future of software development, particularly from an Indian perspective?
Uh, so three things. One is one is obviously generative AI. Generative AI is extremely important. It's going to change the world as we know it. I actually liken generative AI to the time when printing press was invented. Before the printing press, people wrote out manuscripts by hand. Everything took like far longer. Even the message that would go from if a message has to be disseminated across the country, it would take like months because manuscripts would get destroyed. Printing press completely changed that. There was no there was no renaissance before the printing press. There was no industrial age before the printing press. All of that came to being with the printing press, and generative AI is another one of those moments where we are going to come back and ask, uh, hey, this is a post-industrial age thing. How many people do we need to run a company? How many people do we need to build software for a company? and all of our existing assumptions are going to get completely revised. So that is one big change that is going to impact our lives. And we have to rethink how we build software, how we staff companies to build software. That's one. Second is obviously costing models. uh, as we think about companies, obviously the cost of building and running a company, the cost of sales is going to change a lot, especially if you're selling to enterprises. It ends up being super expensive to hire and maintain a sales team, and you have to do it very, very thoughtfully. So that is something that requires a lot of focus.
Right, sir. Right, sir. You mentioned about AI, in fact, generative AI, but AI has its own set of challenges. In fact, most of the firms, if you see across the globe, are
Mhm.
not willing to engage with AI because of data security reasons. But then, like I said, the generative AI is like disrupting the market. And in the future, it is expected to disrupt the pace of the organizations as well, the digital transformation as well. So, any thoughts on that, sir?
I so people are the gains will far outweigh the challenges. Look, any new technology, there's always going to be some people who are going to, obviously for rightfully so, be wary of it. Like, think of fire, right? I mean, fire has its good things, and fire can be extremely devastating. So if you think about the opportunity that fire presented to, cavemen, it was massive. And so to that extent, it is really important for us to use any technology with the right uh, with the right balance. And so to that extent, that's how I think about generative AI.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
It has its
Uh,
challenge, but over time people will clearly come and value it for what it is.
right, sir. Another follow-up question with respect to the same subject is, what
Mhm.
strategies do you employ to keep pace with rapidly evolving technologies and industry standards at Prodigal?
Say it again. Oh, we
What strategies?
so we take part in kind of three very, very distinct innovation, or like, communities. One is the product and the tech community at large. The second is the kind of finance community, which is our consumers, which is more traditional finance. And the third is the generative, like the startup community. So all three of them are have overlaps but somewhat distinct, and that is how we identify ourselves, as we are a startup that brings technology, or builds engineering products for the finance vertical. And by constantly meeting new people, by constantly going and listening to what other smart people have to say, by talking to a lot of our customers, we get ahead and stay up to date with the latest available out there.
Right, sir. There's another question with respect to AI. Uh, Probably you could elaborate more on this. So this question says, could you elaborate on the role of data analytics and AI in shaping Prodigal's approach to software development for global clients?
Yeah, we are being kind of data driven is one of our core values, and we call it specificity. What that means is every product decision needs to be vetted and backed by analytics. If we want to double down on a particular customer segment, if you want to build a feature, we need to understand how likely is that feature going to be used, and what proxies indicate that the feature is actually a popular one. Similarly, if a model is performing well or not well, we need to understand what is the source of what is the source of that uh, lift, and how do you know double down on that lift. uh, Pretty much, like, more than half of our company is extremely comfortable with SQL and even more advanced analytics tools. All of our internal reporting is done in a very, very data driven manner as well.
Uh, so I would like to request you to share some of the tools that you are using for data analytics so that our batch can be, benefited out of this conversation. Any specific tools that you're using and any recent use cases that you can share with us?
We all for analytics, we obviously use Tableau. as a reporting and visualization tool sitting on top of our databases in Amazon. And obviously, we can use we can use Salesforce for sales data, as well as Google Sheets for a bunch of other data. Uh, a lot of our kind of core engineering development obviously happens in Python, and Python has its own set of like really strong development and visualization libraries. And then kind of you would write we would use Databricks for a lot of our analytics workbench, even within the engineering team. So so if you're super technical, you would do a lot of things in Python itself. If you're slightly less technical than that, you would use the Databricks framework to run queries. If you're even less technical, you would write it in SQL. And if you are if even less even more business oriented, you would go to Tableau. And even more business oriented and just need results, you would look at Google Sheets or Excel sheets. So that would be the gamut from Python at one end to like Google Sheets on the other.
Right, sir. Rightly said, sir. Then there's another question, which is more towards how the company works. It says, how do you manage the time zone differences and ensure effective communication with international clients and teams?
Yeah, so
Like,
I'm based
yeah,
in the US.
yeah,
So I'm in the US in California, but we have a lot of our team based in Mumbai and Bangalore. And so typically my working hours are from 6 a.m. Pacific till about 8:30 or 9 p.m. Pacific. That gives me ample coverage across obviously all the US time zones, but as well as gives me like a good 4 or 5 hour overlap with our colleagues in India.
yes, sir. Greatly answered, sir. Then there's another question that says, as a leader, what advice do you have for young Indian entrepreneurs aspiring to build software solutions for a global audience? That's very
So three
important, sir.
it's a great question. It is a very important question. I would say go 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 understand your customer's pain point a lot. Um, do not so that's the first thing. Do, like spend a lot of time with them, understand their use case intimately. Uh, do not uh, do not get lost if you're starting a startup. The first thing you need to really understand is do you have a software that solves a customer's pain point to like a 10x better 10x better state than it is available today. So spend time understanding how your software does that. That's the second thing. One is identify a problem much better than anything any of your competitors understand. Second is build software that actually delights them. And then the third thing is honestly just work hard. There is that is one thing that no one can take away from you. And most of your competition isn't probably going to work hard, and your edge in working hard actually takes you much further from them. Those would be my three things, but the first and foremost is understand the pain point as deeply as you can. Y Combinator has a motto: build something customers want. um, it kind of it kind of say it has three operative words. Customers, obviously you need to know who your customer is, and you have to really know what are their what they look like, what kind of keeps them up at night, what are their fears, aspirations. They need to want it. It shouldn't be something that is a good to have. They need to like really viscerally want it. So your customer might be you might think your customer is a teacher in uh, in Europe, but does she really want your solution, or is it a good to have? Makes a big difference if you continuously figure out that solution. And then the third thing is build. A lot of people try to do a lot of things except build. If you don't build, I think you're not going to capture the value. uh, Creating something from nothing is where the value gets created. And there are no shortcuts. Then there are no shortcuts to building.
Yes, sir. So I can understand that the essence of being an entrepreneur is to understand the pain points of people. Only then you can build a proper solution that people will accept. Right, sir?
Correct.
Yeah. So another question is basically into the diversity that happens across geographies. And even India is a diverse country wherein There are different people with different languages, cultures, and other things. But then what happens is, in a global scenario, could you share some insights on how Prodigal addresses the unique requirements and expectation of clients from different regions? Because people have different perspectives across the globe.
Yeah, I think that this is no this is almost, so you need to identify um, the commonalities in your customer rather than the differences. And if you really identify things that are common with everyone you call a customer today or tomorrow, and then focus on it, then the differences start mattering less. Again, if you're building like an application for mothers worldwide, you really need to care about like what mothers expect from their children. What are their aspirations of their kids, what are the things that they're worried about for their kids, and so on and so forth. It really doesn't matter if that mother speaks a particular language or doesn't speak that language. It doesn't matter if she is has preferences of one sitcom versus another sitcom. So how you define your what is called as an ideal customer persona, and then how well are you able to address their pain points, fears, aspirations, desires from your software, uh, allows you to double down on it and then actually minimize the things that actually make them different. Obviously, India is, like you said, a very, very diverse country. America is quite diverse too. Now, if you focus on the things that make them different and try to create very, very, ancillary, not core, vanity things that focus on the differences, but really fail to address the things that actually make them the same, you're not going to succeed. That's the reality of it. On the other hand, if you really address the core pain points, then it doesn't matter what income level, college education, racial preference, racial background your customers come from, they're still going to love your product because you address the one thing that really makes them the define like is the defining characteristic of the ICP. So I
Rightly
think
said.
it's somewhat of a relevant question.
Yeah, yeah, fine. That was a great response. So, what I could take away from this is that commonality in various geographies and dealing with different kinds is the success mantra that Indian entrepreneurs and other people could look at.
Yep.
Right, sir. Uh, Another question says, in a highly competitive global market, how does Prodigal differentiate itself in terms of software quality and innovation?
We by focusing on the same things, we understand our customers' pain point a lot more than any of our competitors. We honestly also work harder than any of our competitors, and we build software that is extremely delightful uh, to them. So obviously, a lot of these things go hand in hand. You cannot you might choose to work hard, but it's irrelevant if you don't know what your customers want. But if you know what your customers want, if you build software that is extremely delightful and you work hard, I think that you makes an unbeatable trio.
Right, sir. Uh, Really said. But then there's another question, or rather a follow-up question. What are the ethical considerations that Prodigal takes into account when developing software solutions for diverse global users? Like we see in Europe, there are GDPR issues, and even different countries are coming up with various security on IT platforms. So
Mhm.
the question is, what are the ethical considerations that Prodigal takes into account when developing software solutions for diverse global users? We'll have to go through a lot of regulations. How would Prodigal navigate through?
This is maybe a variant of a question that came earlier, but essentially, again, by focusing on things that make them common. So there are two aspects of it. One is what the customers want, and how do you know, make sure that your software actually serves their need in an extremely inclusive manner. That's actually an easier question. The second question, which refers to the GDPR portion of it, is more a regulatory challenge. The second question is essentially you need to go through the laws, build stuff as the laws kind of outline. For example, if you go to most of the websites, you'll see like a bunch of these banners at the bottom that talk about cookies and like do you accept cookies and reject cookies and stuff like that. I mean, there is a there is a finite cost to go through it. you hire the right people, you find the right GDPR consultants, you pay them some money, and they'll do the job for you. The first problem, like I said, is harder, which is how do you, in order for you to be inclusive, you need to understand like what is common to them and then drive value across the board. Our users aren't end consumers. Our users are the businesses. So to that extent, maybe our problem is easier. But I think the law in most cases is pretty black and white. And yeah, the law is pretty black and white, and in some ways you can address it by talking to the right lawyers and getting the right advice, paying for the right
Yes.
advice.
Yes. A follow-up question to that would be, Prodigal is a startup as of now,
Mhm.
and engaging with different consultants across the globe. Because what would happen is when Prodigal is selling something in Europe and selling something in USA, the
Mhm.
set of regulations will be different. And even India is coming up with own set of GDPR set of regulations. Now, what would
Correct.
happen is, wouldn't that add to the cost of service? And would Prodigal be still able to differentiate itself with respect to the other players?
So it adds to the cost of service. I think that part is quite clear, and then you choose to decide if you want to operate in certain markets or leave them out altogether. For example, for us, it is too expensive to operate in. And it's not a regulatory expense. It's just the customization and the configuration that the product would need to do to operate, let's say in Italy, is quite high. So we choose not to operate in that Italy today. And so it's in some ways it's a rather straightforward ROI analysis, uh, which kind of goes back to like what is common to these people. We understand that, build upon that, and yeah, if you have to make some hard choices because you can't chase everything under the sun at all the times. So like I said, we do not operate in Italy for that reason. Nothing against Italy, just like, hey, customizing ourselves to that language is not a pain that we want to live with at this point.
Yes, sir. Greatly answered, sir. Another question will be towards educational institutions and building talent in India.
Right.
It says, how does Prodigal collaborate with educational institutions and industry bodies to contribute to the skill development of Indian talent? Probably
We
upskilling them. Yeah.
Yeah, so I come from IIT Bombay, so I actually we hire a lot of like interns from IIT Bombay. We hire interns from many colleges across the country. That will obviously give them an exposure to what it is to work in a startup, and that is something that we take a lot of pride in. We even for this summer we'll continue hiring interns, give them a dip their toe in the life of working at a startup across engineering, business analytics, customer success, and so on and so forth. All of those things allow us to firstly understand both which are the educational institutions that are more receptive to kind of working with startups versus which are the education institutions that are a little more, let's say, rigid in their views. A lot of colleges will basically not have startups on whatever their day zero, day one of placements. That makes it hard. But then if you hire interns and then you kind of convert them, that gives you an opportunity to tap into that talent pool. Similarly, we understand which colleges train their students really exceptionally well, and then we can lean into that at the time of going broader. Versus if like some of the best students of a college are not that great, they don't know what they're doing, then we like, hey, we don't want to go back to that college anymore. So it gives us a sense of calibration as well.
Uh, uh, Rightly said, sir. So the last question of the fireside chat is, looking ahead, what are the future prospects and goals for Prodigal in continuing to build software for the world from India? That's a very open-ended
Yeah,
question, though.
no, I think so we continue obviously building both our teams in US as well as India. Not just engineering functions, but we also have customer success, marketing based out of India as well. It gives us a great opportunity to understand the customer pain point, work hand in glove with our engineering team to kind of have the customer point of view, voice of the customer be heard by the engineering team very, 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 very closely. And we'll continue building all of those teams out as like every single month, and allow us to grow. We will yeah, our team size has pretty much gone from like 15 to 50 in India in a reasonably short span of time, and that is something we will continue growing.
Right, sir. So we can understand that Prodigal is going really fast, and in fact, when you look into the Indian talent pool, it's growing like anything. So we hope that Prodigal even recruits from our campuses as well, and other colleges that would actually groom up the Indian talent. With that, sir, I would like to open the floor for Q&A from the batch. So people can raise their hands and then start asking their questions. Uh, People can
Uh,
start asking their questions.
yes, Rishikesh here. I hope I'm audible.
Yep.
Yeah. So, good morning, and thanks for the detailed and audible talk on today. So, my question is regarding AI itself. So, recently, I had taken up this course at XLRI on big data, where we also came across Gen AI and the various issues that it faces. For
Yeah.
example, much of Gen AI is actually not very well understood. This is one of
Yeah.
the common themes that we came across. And model hallucination, which actually I personally encountered while using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So, how do you deal with these two issues when you are building your AI solutions?
So great question. So generative AI. So when you say it's not well understood, do you mean it's not well understood by the common man or by engineers?
Actually, what I came across is that even the people who are creating it are not able to exactly say what makes it work in a certain way. Or please correct me if I have the wrong idea.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite the case. I'll come to the hallucination point correctly. I think everything, like people who build a system, like we build a lot on top of open source.
Right.
We we understand what is being built. The
Mm.
hallucination is a different thing. Just like you would probably have a creative friend who's also unpredictable.
Okay.
So versus there are other kinds of friends who are extremely predictable. Like think of Chatur from the movie Three Idiots,
Right.
right? Some predictable person. So Gen AI is not Chatur. It is like a
Okay.
little bit like Rancho. Like it's creative, but you can't really predict what it's gonna say. Now that a lot of that is governed by this setting called temperature, right? So one of the parameters that is kind of crucial to generative AI's ability to be creative is this thing called temperature, that essentially, simply put, mirrors creativity.
Okay.
And so the question is, if you want, if you're given like a sliding scale between like a Chatur and a Rancho,
Right.
what do you, right? So generative AI is not 100% Chatur for sure. It has a little bit of elements of Rancho in it, which is not predictable.
Mm.
Uh, right? It is not behavior that you might have seen before. It is
Right.
behavior that is kind of very, very different. And so to that extent, you can't have all of you can't have the brilliance and creativity of Rancho without the vagaries or without the eccentric behavior of Rancho in the same model.
Okay.
I'm referring to the movie Three Idiots. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
for some better reference, yeah. So generative AI models tend to hallucinate, which is basically called, they tend to kind of at times have eccentric outputs. And the
Right.
way to deal with that in an enterprise setting is reasonably straightforward, where you kind of ask it to do two things. One is ask it to run multiple outputs, and if if the two outputs are very, very different in its uh, outcome from one
Right.
another, then you reject both of them and go again, right?
Okay.
So because it is super unlikely that it will hallucinate like two independent runs of it are both eccentric in the same manner is extremely unlikely. And then you can actually go a step further and say that I expect my output to be of a certain kind. So even creativity, you kind of bound the creativity and say my creativity is is within a certain expectation.
Right.
And so to that extent, you put some guardrails around the Rancho creativity, and then you flip it back and ask people to, again, if you don't like the output, you can always reject the output of a generative AI model, and you would do that.
So I have a couple of follow-ups with that, if you don't mind. Yeah. So the other part of understanding the models is that most Gen AI models, while they are being created by experts like you and your employees, a layperson like me or anyone who's using it may not be aware of exactly how or why the AI is generating a certain output. So how can you sort of build guardrails around that to help them understand, like when the model is, for example, when the model is hallucinating, or if it is maybe by giving biased outputs, or maybe there's the reward hacking phenomenon being observed, which actually I personally observed a lot in Chat GPT. Seems to
Yeah.
be very susceptible to that. So how would
So
you do that?
so biases is kind of different from hallucination. So
Yes.
hallucination you overcome by saying that my answer has to be of a certain kind, right?
Right.
And I expect, uh, yeah, if you're asking it to write a song, you basically say my song has to be between whatever, like 8 to 10 lines. Each line is 4 to 6 words, and then suddenly if it hallucinates something completely arbitrary in a blob
Right.
of text, uh, you would catch it. So the thing about hallucination is it is extremely rare that it hallucinate in a if it hallucinates, it just goes off on a complete tangent. It is extremely eccentric. It is not going to be slightly different but largely the same. Like if it is hallucinating, it is gone off its rails. So to that extent, you can put in place some simple format that say no, are you repeating the same thing again and again? Is your structure very different this time around? So that is hallucination. Hallucinating slightly doesn't happen.
Mm.
Tushar, you can ask a question.
Thank you.
Hi Shantanu, welcome to Excel and thank you for taking this.
Absolutely.
My question to you is I was going through one of the articles shared by you
Yeah,
and it was primarily talking about the lending space.
right.
So the question is, though there are commonalities between different demographics in order to be able to be with, in order for the AI to be able to assist us better, but how do you differentiate uh, in a prospective customer uh, who may have a high customer lifetime value, but also involves high customer acquisition cost, or vice versa. They may not have a high lifetime value, but have a high customer acquisition cost. Why do I ask so? Because in order to acquire these customers, you need to also understand cost neutrality perspective for all the projects. So could you shed some light on it?
Uh, I felt your question already had the answer embedded in it in some way. So basically, if you already know high cost, and if you can somewhat quantify the lifetime value and the cost of acquisition, you would actually make the trade-off, and it's actually simple. The problem comes when you actually when you can't quantify either of them. That is when it's a big issue. In most cases, the math around what do you do if you actually have those values outlined is pretty simple. You would basically like subtract one from the other, and if the lifetime value is greater than the acquisition cost, you would probably take it. Um, yeah, what you do want to do, especially as a software company, is have a lot of customers of the same kind, and so to that extent, obviously, if you're getting bad customers that are very different from your existing customers, you don't want that. And if you're even if you're getting like customers like too good to be true, if tomorrow like the biggest bank in the world came to me and wanted to work with me, I still need to be extremely thoughtful about it. because that's a customer that we need to not only acquire and have it will have like high acquisition cost and high lifetime cost, but also require us as a company to do different things from what we have done in the past.
It answers me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tushar, for your question. Uh, are there any further questions? Right. So if there are no further questions,
Ritesh, you went on mute.
sorry. Yes, sir. So if the batch doesn't have any questions, we would formally like to, in fact, end this session with a small vote of thanks. Dear batch, we have just experienced an enlightening and enriching session with Mr. Shantanu Gangal, CEO of Prodigal, who generously shared his invaluable insights. First and foremost, let me express our deepest gratitude to Mr. Shantanu Gangal for gracing us with his presence and for delivering a truly enlightening session. Your depth of knowledge, practical wisdom, and engaging delivery has left an indelible mark on all of us. We are fortunate to have had the opportunity to learn from someone of your caliber. I would like to extend our sincere thanks to all participants for actively engaging in the session. Your thoughtful questions and eagerness to learn have contributed immensely to the success of this event. The enthusiasm and energy demonstrated by each one of you has created a dynamic and interactive atmosphere, making this session truly memorable. A special note of appreciation goes to Team GST, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the seamless execution of the event. As we bring this session to a close, let us carry forward the knowledge and inspiration gained today into our professional and academic pursuits. The journey of learning is continuous. With mentors like Mr. Shantanu Gangal, we are better equipped to navigate the complexities of our chosen fields. Once again, thank you, Mr. Shantanu Gangal, for your enlightening discourse, and thank you to all the participants for your active involvement. Have a wonderful day. Signing off, sir.
Thank you so much. Hope you have
Thank you so much, sir.
bright careers ahead of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.